Cambridge IGCSE Chemistry Paper 2, Specimen Paper 2020. Let's go. Question 1. Amino acids are colorless and can be separated and identified by chromatography. What additional apparatus is required to identify the amino acids present in a mixture? There are chromatography paper, glass cover, beaker, and solvent here. While they said it's colorless, so we'll need a locating agent to make it visible. Also, to identify the amino acids, we'll need a ruler to measure the distance the amino acids have traveled to calculate the RF value. The answer is C. Question 2. The diagram shows the diffusion of hydrogen chloride and ammonia in a glass tube. The gases are given off by the solutions at each end of the tube. When hydrogen chloride and ammonia mix, they produce a white solid, ammonium chloride. Which line shows where the white solid is formed? So this depends on the rate of diffusion of each substance at the end of the tube. The heavier the substance is, the slower it diffuses and thus travels a shorter distance. Since the relative molecular mass of hydrochloric acid is heavier than that of ammonia solution, the white solid will be formed at D, closer to hydrochloric cottonol. Question 3. The diagram shows the structure of an atom. Which diagram shows the structure of an isotope of this atom? Isotope is an atom with same number of protons but different number of neutrons. So the correct diagram should have 2 protons but a different number of neutrons. The answer is A, which has 2 protons and 1 neutron. Question 4. The table shows the structure of different atoms and ions. What are the values of W, X, Y, and Z? W is the number of neutrons of magnesium atom. To find it, minus the proton number from nucleon number, and you get 12. X is the proton number of Mg2+. The number of protons does not change whether it's an atom or an ion, so it's still 12, just like Mg above. Y is the number of neutrons for F. Same thing, minus the proton number from nucleon number and you'll get it. It's 10. Z is the number of electrons of F-. When it didn't have any charge, there were 9 electrons, so once it got an additional negative charge, it means it gained 1 electron, so now it will have 10 electrons. Answer is D. Question 5. Iron is a metal. The structure of iron is described as a lattice of positive ions in a sea of electrons. Which of the following statements about iron are correct? 1. Iron conducts electricity because the electrons are free to move. That's correct. The sea of electrons pass on the electricity to one another. 2. Iron has a high melting point due to the strong covalent bonds. This is not true. Iron does not have covalent bonds but has metallic bond. Iron is an alloy. This is not true as well. Iron is an atom. You can find it in a periodic table. 4. Iron is malleable because the layers of atoms can slide over one another. Yes, this is correct. They can slide over one another and that makes it malleable. Question 6. Which 2 elements react together to form an ionic compound? Ionic compound is formed when 1 or more electrons are transferred to another atom to make a complete shell. So it will be X and Z, where an electron from X can move to Z, and both form stable atoms with full electron shell. Question 7. Ethane is an unsaturated hydrocarbon. Which description of the bonding in ethane is correct? A. All atoms in the molecule have a share of 8 electrons. Nope. Hydrogen shares 1 electron with carbon, and carbon atoms are sharing 4 electrons with other atoms. B. Each carbon atom shares 2 of its electrons with hydrogen atoms and 2 of its electrons with a carbon atom. There are 2 lines connecting a carbon atom with another carbon atom, and yes, 1 line each with the 2 hydrogen atoms. So this is the correct answer. C. Each carbon atom shares 2 of its electrons with hydrogen atoms and 1 of its electrons with a carbon atom. Now, it shares 2 electrons with a carbon atom instead of just 1. The hydrogen part is correct. D. The 2 carbon atoms share a total of 6 electrons with other atoms. Nope, they are sharing 4 electrons with other atoms. Question 8. What is the relative molecular mass (mR) of butanol? Butanol is C4H9OH. So to calculate the MR, add up all the MR from each type of an atom. 4 carbon atoms, so 4 times 12 equals to 48. 10 hydrogen atoms, so 10 times 1, so 10. Then 1 oxygen atom, so 16. Add up all of them, it's 74. The answer is C. Question 9. The chemical formulae of 2 substances W and X are given. W is NaAlSi3O8, X is CaAlSi2O8. Which statements are correct? 1. W and X contain the same amount of oxygen. Yeah, both have 8 oxygen atoms. 2. W contain 3 times as much silicon as X. W has 3 silicon atoms and X has 2, so nope. 3. X contains twice as much aluminum as W. Yes, X has 2 aluminum atoms and W has 1. The answer is B, 1 and 3. Question 10. What is the concentration of a solution containing 1 gram of sodium hydroxide in 250 cm³ of solution? To find the concentration, use the formula concentration equals to number of moles divided by volume. We don't have the number of moles here, so find it by dividing the mass with mR. 1 divided by 23 plus 16 plus 1, which is 0.025. Then we're going to divide 0.025 with 0.25 instead of 250 because we need to change it to dm³. You'll get 0.1 mole per dm³ as the answer. Question 11. 4 students prepared hydrated copper 2 sulfate by adding an excess of dilute sulfuric acid to copper 2 oxide. Each student used a different mass of copper 2 oxide. After the copper 2 sulfate had crystallized, the students dried and weighed the crystals. Which student produced the highest percentage yield of hydrated copper 2 sulfate? To compare the percentage yield, find the number of moles from each mass of copper oxide used and the mass of crystals produced. For A, the number of moles of copper oxide used is 4 divided by 80, the relative molecular mass of copper 2 oxide, which is 0.05, and for crystals produced, it's 11.5 divided by 250, the relative molecular mass of crystals, and you'll get 0.046. Now, to find the percentage yield, divide 0.046 with 0.05 and multiply it with 100. It's 92%. Same calculations go for the rest of the options. It's a lot of calculations, so you have to be fast enough to figure out what you need to do and make sure you don't make any mistakes. While the results are the following, you can see that B has the highest percentage of 94%, so B is the answer. Question 12. 20 cm³ of ethine, C2H2 are reacted with 500 cm³ of oxygen. The equation for the reaction is this. CO2 and H2O are produced. What is the total volume of gas remaining at the end of the reaction? All volumes are measured at room temperature and pressure. The numbers in front of the chemicals represent the ratio, and we just need to look at that. This equation says 2 ethine molecules and 5 oxygen molecules are needed to produce 4 carbon dioxide molecules and 2 water molecules. In other words, this can also mean that 20 cm³ of ethine and 50 cm³ of oxygen will produce 40 cm³ of carbon dioxide and 20 cm³ of water. Note that although the question said ethine is reacted with 500 cm³ of water, only 50 cm³ of water is used. So we first had 520 cm³ of reactants, then 20 cm³ and 50 cm³ are used. 40 cm³ of carbon dioxide is produced, so add that and we get 490 cm³ of gas left at the end. Question 13. Different metals were tested using the apparatus shown. Which pair of metals produced the largest voltage? The metals with the biggest gap between them in the reactivity series will produce the largest voltage. This is the reactivity series. Copper and silver are here quite close by. Magnesium and silver are 8 blocks away. Magnesium and zinc are pretty near, and zinc and copper are 4 blocks away. So the answer is B, magnesium and silver, who are the furthest from each other. Question 14. 3 electrolysis cells are set up. Each cell has inert electrodes. The electrolytes are listed below. In which of these cells is a gas formed at both electrodes? This question is related to reactivity series as well, and the electrodes are inert, so we just need to care about the electrolytes. Cell 1. Aqueous sodium chloride. In the solution, there will be H plus and OH minus ions because it's aqueous, and Na plus and Cl minus ions, of course. H plus and OH minus ions will be formed because they are more down the series. So hydrogen gas and oxygen gas will be formed. A gas is formed at both electrodes. Cell 2. Dilute sulfuric acid. There will be H plus and OH minus ions again because it's dilute, and H plus ions and SO42 minus ions from sulfuric acid. Well, H plus ions is the only cation, so hydrogen gas will be formed, and OH minus ions are more likely to form than SO42 minus ions. So again, oxygen will be formed. Cell 2 is also correct. Cell 3, molten lead-2 bromide. Since it's molten, only Pb2 plus and Br minus ions will be present. Pb2 plus ions will not form a gas, it's a metal, and Br minus will form bromine gas, but since the question said both electrodes, cell 3 is not the answer. So the answer is A, 1 and 2. Question 15. The statements refer to the electrolysis of concentrated copper to chloride solution. Which statements about the electrolysis of concentrated copper to chloride are correct? 1. Electrons are transferred from the cathode to the copper 2 ions. Yep, cathode is where cations are, so it is actually transferring electrons to the copper 2 ions and attracting them. 2. Electrons move around the circuit from the cathode to the anode. Nope, electrons always move from the anode to the cathode. You need to remember this. 3. Chloride ions are attracted to the anode. Chloride ions are negatively charged, they are anions. So yes, they are attracted to the anode. 4. Hydroxide ions transfer electrons to the cathode. This is not possible because it is a concentrated solution and there is no OH minus ions involved. It's just Cu2 plus and Cl minus ions. So nope. The answer is A, 1 and 3. Question 16. Water can be used to produce hydrogen gas. Which row describes bond breaking in the reactants? Always remember, bond breaking is an endothermic reaction. You need energy to break the bond, so you need to absorb the energy or some form of energy to make it happen. So the answer is A, endothermic and heat absorbed. Question 17. Dinitrogen tetroxide N2O4 breaks down into nitrogen dioxide NO2. The reaction is reversible and endothermic. Which conditions will give the largest yield of nitrogen dioxide NO2? To make it produce the largest yield of NO2, it needs to make sure that more forward reactions are happening because NO2 is at the product's side. The question said the reaction is endothermic, meaning the forward reaction will decrease the temperature since endothermic reactions absorb heat, while the reaction in equilibrium will always try to maintain its condition, so we trigger the endothermic reaction to occur by increasing the temperature. In this way, more NO2 will be formed. For the pressure, the more number of moles on one side of the equation, the higher the pressure, because it means there are more number of moles in the same given space. We can see that the side with NO2 has more number of moles, so it's where the pressure is higher, and if the forward reaction occurs, the overall pressure will increase. Same thing, to trigger the forward reaction to occur, we decrease the temperature. Low pressure will result in bigger yield of NO2. The answer is B, high temperature and low pressure. Question 18. The apparatus shown can be used to measure the rate of some chemical reactions. For which two reactions would this apparatus be suitable? We have a gas syringe connected to the conical flask. This apparatus is used to measure the volume of gas produced in a given time to calculate the rate of reaction. So just look for the reaction that produces gas as one of its products. Reactions 2 and 4 produce gas as a result, and the rest don't. So the answer is C. Question 19. A student investigates the rate of reaction between magnesium and excess sulfuric acid. The volume of hydrogen given off in the reaction is measured over time. The graph shows the results of two experiments, R and S. Which change in condition to cause the difference between R and S? R has reached the maximum volume of hydrogen given off earlier than S did, but in the end, same amount of hydrogen was produced. It means the rate of reaction of R was faster than S. A. A catalyst is added in S. Nope, because catalyst makes the reaction go on faster, but in this case, S was slower than R. B. The acid is more concentrated in R than in S. This could be the answer because with higher concentration but less volume, there will be same number of moles, but it would increase the rate of reaction. C. The magnesium is less finely powdered in R than in S. If it's less finely powdered, it means the surface area is lower and this will decrease the rate of reaction. That is the opposite of what the graph is showing, so this is incorrect. D. The temperature in R is lower than in S. Again, this will decrease the rate of reaction instead of increasing it, so it's not the answer. B is the right answer. Question 20. Which of these reactions shows only reductions? Reduction is the gain of electrons, so find the reaction that only gained electrons. Cu2 plus 2 electrons giving Cu. Yeah, we already got the answer. It only gains electrons, And in real exam, you should quickly move on to the next question, but this is a tutorial video, so let's take a look at the other reactions. Fe2O3 plus 3CO giving 2Fe and 3CO2. Fe from here is actually Fe3 plus, but it became Fe here, so it gained electrons. But carbon here is C2 plus, but after the reaction, it became C4 plus, forming carbon dioxide. This is oxidation where they lose electrons. HCl plus NaOH producing NaCl and H2O. If I write the charge of each element involved here, it's like this. You can see that there is no change in charge for any of the ions, meaning both reduction and oxidation have not occurred. Mg plus zinc sulfate react to form zinc and magnesium sulfate. Mg was just an atom, so it has no charge, but after the reaction, it has formed a compound with sulfate ion, so it became Mg2+, losing electrons. Oxidation has occurred. Then for zinc, from zinc 2+ ion to zinc atom with no charge, it gained 2 electrons going through a reduction. We fully made sure that A is the answer. Okay, I'll do the rest 20 questions in my next video, so subscribe to watch right away my new videos, and comment or like my video if it helped you. All the best, stay safe, and God bless you guys. Bye!